going on YouTube? Welcome back to Redline Revs. I've got my BBC iPlayer open today, and what we're going to be doing is talking about a new TV show about cars. This is it. It's Idris Elba, King of Speed. Now the reason that I've got it up here in the search bar is because I just couldn't find it listed anymore. I stumbled across it the other day, hadn't heard much about the show, but here it is. There's 2 episodes so far. I've only seen episode 1. And I want to talk to you about why I'm so excited about this show and why you should watch this. Firstly, who is Idris Elba? Now, Idris Elba is obviously a very famous and well-known actor. He's been in a number of different types of films, like American Gangster, Prometheus, Thor, Avengers, Beasts of No Nation. And he's also been in a lot of really big, very popular TV shows. So he played Stringer Bell in The Wire, which is one of my favourite shows. He's also played John Luther in Luther. He's played Mandela in Long Walk to Freedom. So he's a very, very accomplished actor, but he's not just an actor because he's also a music producer, a DJ. He has spent some time training as a kickboxer and has entered the ring as well and had a professional fight. So really a very, very interesting character, and seems like a nice guy generally. Now, the reason I find this show so interesting is because in just the first episode, which is the only one I've seen, I've not seen episode 2 yet, but in episode 1, Idris Elba manages to cover all sorts of really important social, political, and economic issues around the question of cars, motoring, and the industry and the production of cars. So actually, in that first episode, he talks about, and I'm going to compare him to Jeremy Clarkson, who I don't like. And so in this first episode of King of Speed, Idris Elba talks very proudly about how his father used to be a shop steward in the Ford Dagenham plant, and of course that's a welcome change from growing up watching shows like Top Gear, where you've got posh toffs like Jeremy Clarkson at every opportunity just making snidey remarks and comments against working class people and things like that. So that was a really welcome change to the sort of car shows that I'm used to seeing on the BBC and on TV in general. And also, one of the things that Idris Elba talks a lot about in episode 1 of The King of Speed is the impact that scaling back on car production or closure of car plants has had on working class communities. So I mentioned he talks about how his father was a shop steward at the Dagenham Ford plant. Now, at its peak in Dagenham, Ford employed 40,000 workers, and over the years, production has scaled back. Lots of areas of that plant have been closed down, and I think there's still some activity there today, but it employs a tiny fraction of the amount of people that it did. So it went from about 40,000 workers to maybe 3,000 or 4,000 today. So he talks about the impact that had on the community in Dagenham, on people's prospects, on people's opportunities in life, what it means for kids growing up when your parents don't have a job. I know in that part of London there's been lots of problems with unemployment, with drug abuse and things like that, and all of the kind of symptoms of sort of poverty. And Elba compares that when he's over in the States to Detroit, because of course in Detroit there was also a closure of a big Ford plant, and he looked at the impact that's had on the community there and compares it to Dagenham. And all of that was, for me, very, very fascinating to see on the BBC, to see on a car enthusiast channel, because it cuts through the sort of superficial stuff that we do around cars and the stuff that we see, and we're all guilty of it, and I'm as guilty of it as you guys as well. We all watch on YouTube nice flashy cars and all that, and that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that. How are these things being produced? Who's producing them? Who's buying them? Who's selling them? Who's profiting from them? All of these all of these are important questions for us to think about. And it might be like, you might think they're all straightforward questions, and of course we know the answers to them, but actually it might also be stuff that we're not thinking about very much, and should be thinking about. And that's what I want to take my hats off to Idris Elba for getting us to start thinking about these more significant social, economic, political issues related to cars and driving than the superficial crap that we're all used to. Much more interesting than anything that we've seen from Top Gear and Jeremy Clarkson and all of the rest of that. So I definitely recommend people check this out. It spends a lot of time in episode 1 going over to the States, looking at underground street racing, a little bit of NASCAR and stuff like that. And you get the impression that when he's out there, when he's speaking to people, he's not belittling them, he's not being abusive to them, he's not being racist towards their culture, like Jeremy Clarkson was so many times around the world while he was filming Top Gear for the BBC. So all of that's a welcome change, and also, going back to the class thing, Elba talks in this episode, in episode 1, about how he his first ever job was a tyre fitter, and that's what he did. He talks about it very proudly, and I don't think Jeremy Clarkson's probably done a honest hard day's work in his life where he's actually had to graft. So that's the difference between these two people, and the difference between where they're coming from. So I've been slagging off Jeremy Clarkson a little bit, and there might be some people that don't like that because he was almost a national institution for a while, and of course we all love cars and all of that. So it's understandable that as we were growing up and Top Gear was the only thing on TV, that's all we used to watch. But Jeremy Clarkson is by any measure a horrible person. So I think he's a classist. He's made I don't want to call them jokes, but he's made really offensive remarks about lorry drivers. He made offensive comments about black Muslim lesbians, about how talking about if you have a blue-eyed white person on TV, then there has to be a black Muslim lesbian next to them. Well, I never saw a single black person on Top Gear, thinking back, so I don't know where he got that from, because him and Richard Hammond and the other guy were allowed to be three white guys on a platform for a very long time on the BBC, and nobody ever batted an eyelid. So when they actually left Top Gear, it was interesting for me to finally see some black presenters on there and stuff like that, and it was a bit more diverse, which I think is a good thing. I think it's important that TV media should reflect and represent the society that we live in today, and that's very different from the cast or the old cast of Top Gear. He's made offensive comments about Muslim women in burqas, some creepy comments talking about what they might be wearing underneath that, made really offensive comments about people with special needs, or about how the Ferrari 430 Speciale should have been called, because of the way that the front end looked like a simpleton, it should have been called the 430 Speciale Needs. Now, what kind of a nasty bastard makes jokes or comments about people with learning difficulties or disabilities or special needs? And this is someone whose wages were paid for by the BBC, that's British state TV, which you and I pay our taxes and our TV license towards. Of course, in 2011 he made comments about, Richard Hammond actually made comments about how Mexicans were lazy, feckless, fraudulent, overweight, leaning against a fence asleep, looking at a cactus with a blanket with a hole in the middle as a coat. That is just an offensive remark, and it's just simply racist. Anybody that wants to defend it on my channel can piss right off and click unsubscribe. He's made horrible comments like that in India as well, about the way people are dressed, how they travel, and the country's history as well. So in 2014, you might have remembered he made a really racist remark on a Thai bridge in which they talked about there's a slope on it. Now, I'd never heard the word slope before as a racist remark, and that's the kind of old English sort of racism that these sort of posh snobs come up with from time to time. That you might not even realize what it is they're saying, but actually slope turns out is a racist word for Oriental people. And in 2014, he used the N-bomb. He used the N-word, repeating a children's nursery rhyme, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And then he mumbled, catch a N-word by his toe. And then later in The Sun, he wrote about that remark, I've been told that by the BBC, if I make one more offensive remark anywhere, at any time, I will be sacked. And then, in the end, he was finally sacked for punching his Irish producer and making racist remarks while he did so, because his producer wasn't able to provide him with a steak after filming one day. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back for everybody at the BBC. That's when it went too far. Forget everything that Jeremy Clarkson had said over his career about working class people, about Mexicans, Indians, black people, Muslims. To punch another BBC colleague, a producer, and also to make racist remarks against Irish people. And of course, I'm completely against any sort of racism towards Irish people. But it's interesting that it took when it was he said something racist towards Irish people, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's fair game. Muslims, black people, Mexicans, Thai people are fair game. But you better not say nothing about the Irish. So that's the kind of person Jeremy Clarkson is. Those are the kind of shows we've been used to watching on TV, and I'm absolutely sick of them. So I want you all to log on to BBC iPlayer tonight, or whenever you get the chance, watch episode 1, watch episode 2 of Idris Elba's King of Speed show. I promise you will not be disappointed. You will enjoy it. You will find it interesting. It will get you to think about other issues than just going fast in a car. You will be able to relate to it more, because another problem with shows like the Grand Tour and like Top Gear is that their focus is purely on very, very expensive cars that most likely you and I will never be able to achieve or attain in our lives. They don't look at the sort of cars that ordinary people might be able to buy. They don't look at it from the perspective that ordinary people might look at a car. They don't explore the sort of things that ordinary people might go to with their car, like an underground car show or whatever else. So I think Idris Elba's King of Speed is a fantastic production on the BBC. I think it's much more relatable than Top Gear, than the Grand Tour. I think Idris Elba as a person, as a personality, as an actor, as a person in the media spotlight is so much a better role model for people than that knob Jeremy Clarkson. I'd really encourage everybody to take some time and watch this tonight over the next few days. Episode 1's only available for 16 more days from when I filmed this, and then there's episode 2 there as well. I've just realised that this was actually first shown in 2013, but for some reason it's being repeated now on the BBC. Fantastic show. Make sure you don't miss out on it while it's here on iPlayer. And if you found this useful, make sure you comment, rate, subscribe. If you're someone who really loved Jeremy Clarkson, you're a little bit upset by some of the things I said, then I'm sorry. Those things are all documented. They're all absolutely true. He did say and do all those things. There's no two ways about it. The man is a racist. Not only that, he's just a very posh snob, and he hates working class people and ordinary people and black people and Muslims. And Idris Elba's something very, very different. So that's quite refreshing. A bit more 21st century, I would say. So again, thank you for watching and listening to me rant on. I know it's a bit different to the normal videos that I do, and we'll have more of those coming up. But Red Line Revs was always supposed to be about the Pistons and the politics. So maybe it's about time that we started discussing some of these issues a bit more on the channel. But Not to worry, all the usual stuff will still be coming up. I'm currently driving a Mark 6 2-litre Golf GT TDI, and I've been spending some time with that car before I do a review of it. There's some other stuff coming up as well. The Skoda that we did the exhaust modification on, the 2-litre TFSI, we're going to do a sort of some more videos of the sound of that, attaching the camera onto the exhaust and so on and so forth, and lots of other modifications and maintenance videos coming up as per usual on Redline Revs. Just today, make sure you check out Idris Elba on BBC iPlayer, King of Speed, better than Jeremy Clarkson. Remember where you heard it. This is Redline Revs.